Next thing on the rundown is just Vegas in general. Like, where I'll offload this one to you, Scott, but I'll go through some of the numbers here. So in terms of capacity, Allegiant Stadium has 65,000. For the Panthers and Cronulla game, I think it was reported at 45. They got it to 45,000. I think they were aiming for that 50,000 mark. 2024, they hit 31,000. So how do you see this Las Vegas experiment going at the moment, Scott?
It's going to take a lot for me to get across the line on this because I haven't been a big fan of it from the word go. I think it's realistically, if you read between the lines, it is a play to the US betting market, which that's realistically what it is. And I'm not sure that it does much for the growth of the game globally, opening our NRL season in America. I think there are other ways that you could do it without taking NRL games there and potentially ruining a couple of teams' seasons. Obviously, that didn't happen to the fullest extent that it could have last year, but that trip back and all the rest of it does. I think it creates an unlevel playing field, put it that way. Do I think it's working? Look, better than I expected. Probably 45,000 is a good crowd. There's no doubt about that. Australians are travelling over for it. There were locals there. You only need to read the positive media coming out of it to know that there is an element that's working. But do I think it's the best option that the NRL can be taking to expand the game globally? No, not really.
Yeah. And then this year we did have the additions of the Super League games and the Women's International as well, Darren.
Yeah, we did. And obviously that was a fairly eye-opening scoreline. But yeah, I mean, you look at the Penrith Sharks factor where if they open the season anywhere on the basis of expectation, that was going to be a big ticket item. It's not a bad crowd, but I agree with Scott. The focus of the move is something other than that. I don't think you're trying to sign 50,000 additional NRL members out of the United States. It's purely about eyeballs on it and then a financial backing that comes from that. Obviously, every side will go through it, but not all at the same time. So it will have that imbalance in the fixture where you'll have certain sides dealing with coming back. I know the Broncos were spoken about last year, but there was probably more reasons why things went astray for them. But yeah, it's clearly a TV rights / sponsorship decision rather than we want more fans, I think.
You said, Scott, that you didn't think that it was working. I think it is working tremendously. And purely from a PR point of view. So I totally agree with you. The point and the idea of going there in the first place was the chasing of gambling revenue. Now, whether that's worked, there was some talk that some things had changed in the background that meant they weren't going to get it. But from an eyeball point of view, no one is talking about AFL. You can get an AFL article to save your life. No one's talking about soccer. No one's talking about anything else. Channel 9 sent Carl Stefanovic over this year. They have to cover it. It's too big to ignore. Apparently, it adds, I think the calculator recently was $100 million in tourism revenue to Las Vegas. So they're starting to pay a little bit of attention to it. The Wigan fans and people having the English fans, everyone spoke very positively of that. So regardless of what you get as a product for the game, from the Super League teams, and whether you roll that out to a World Club Challenge as a possibility, having that fan base there, astronomically good. It's become an event. It's become a thing like Magic Round. It really is marketed back towards Australians from a different point of view. But I don't think we're going to see, the Tomahawks make a rise again and play out of the US or something like that. But what we are seeing is just this huge wow moment to start the year. And I think the NRL will happily run it as a loss just for that.
Did Volandis say that that the Vegas feel that the NRL injection in there gave them $100 million in revenue or something of that nature? Which is an extraordinary number if that's true. Just by having it in the city in terms of turnover, the economic stimulus, I think he called it. That would be an extraordinary number. It's 17,000 Australians and 8,000 Kiwis, 10,000 from England in terms of tourists through the region over the course of the weekend. So obviously if Vegas come out of it thinking, we're getting the tourism dollar, then they'll keep paying.
Yeah, and Abdo made a point in a... Sorry, apologies, Scott. I was just going to say, Abdo made a point in an interview recently that even for Americans, Las Vegas is a destination they want to go to as a place. They want to go there and they want to do things while they're there. So just by being in the right place at the right time, that will see a few Americans walk through the doors. I'm not convinced that's the real end goal. it really is marketed back towards Australians. All the merchandise and everything all gears you that way. But I'm a big fan, and I don't know if we get the same impact anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, they're all fair enough points. The one thing I'll be interested to see, I think, from a growth point of view, just going back to my originals, but what are the TV numbers going to be this year? Because last year they were extremely disappointing in America. I think even the NRL had higher hopes for what they were going to be, and they were really low last year. So if the TV numbers have gone up a little bit this year, then you might start to twist my arm a little bit on the whole thing.
Yeah, I think the whole thing centers around growth. Like if you look at other sports, like UFC is very popular in Vegas, especially. Like if you look at their numbers, 10 years ago compared to what they are now, it's incredible. So we are only in the second year, so it will be interesting to see what this looks like at the end of that 5-year deal. So, but speaking of, Scott, so there's still 10 teams left that are yet to go over to Vegas and do the trip. Titans have put up their hand to go in 2027, I believe.
Yeah, the Titans came out the other day through their CEO, Steve Mitchell, and said 2027 is their ideal time, although if they get asked to go next year, they won't say no. The way I see it probably working next year, I think the Dragons and Bulldogs are almost a lock. I think they're going. And I think you've got to have a Queensland club. I don't think you can go 4 Sydney clubs. I think you've got to save the Tigers and Eels for probably 2027 as well. So the way I'd probably go, because the Cowboys stuck their hand up a little while ago, so I'll be going North Queensland and Melbourne as the other 2 teams next year. Melbourne were in the mix for it this year before pulling out their application. But if every team's going to go at some point, I would suggest that next year we're going to see North Queensland versus Melbourne and St George Illawarra versus Canterbury.
There was some talk around Newcastle possibly heading there, but I agree with you that Melbourne and North Queensland matchup is far more appetising, and save Newcastle for another day, particularly if you can conjure up some kind of rivalry there. But I think that's a smart play.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, sorry, go.
I was just going to throw to Darren and ask him, what did you think of the fact that Shane Richardson has come out and said the Tigers, no interest, don't care?
Like someone was going to do it. I guess you're never going to get that universal approval of that type of thing, and somebody was going to be honest enough, I think, to come out and say it. But it might change if they build a bit more momentum and feel like they're headed in the right direction. It might be something they then opt to embrace, but I don't think they have much of a choice in the matter, unfortunately.
Do you think they're just playing hard to get because they're not going to get picked anyway, so they're trying to break up first?
A little bit. I think that's right. It's it's not you, it's me principle.
Yeah.
That's good from you, Retro.
Well, it does seem that nobody wants to, especially if you're... Well, that's the thing with Titans, right? They didn't want to, in a sense, take the hit of going to Vegas because they've seen what it's done to other clubs in previous years. So, interesting one. Vegas, always a really interesting way to start a season. We'll see how it goes next year.